Okay, Rory, what I'm going to do now is go back to the very early days and the famous story of the £4, what was it, 4 and 9 guitar or something in Woolworths and all the rest of it, and back to the Fontana and the Impact and Eric Kitteringham and Norman Damery. So could you fill us in on the 1964-65 era?
Let me see.
65 was the beginning of Taste.
Yeah, 64, 65 I would have been probably playing with the show band at that stage. It was called the Impact Showband, and it was also known as the Fontana Showband, and also masqueraded as a few other people.
Well, like your influences since the very beginning have been in blues and rock, so why did you play in a show band?
Well, I started at school. I tried to get a little rock band together, but there wasn't a youngster who could play the bass guitar around, so we did 1 or 2 gigs with just 2 guitars and drums, and it was sort of ventures in rock and roll material, Chuck Berry. Yeah. So really out of frustration just to play regularly, I just joined a show band. I was only 14 or 15, so and it was a chance to play through an AC30 Vox, which I thought was, the biggest thing that could happen to you. And then it was one of those show bands where you could play sort of 50% rock and roll anyway, and then the usual mixture of rock and pop, or country and western rather. At that age I was still learning, so I mean a couple of years in a show band didn't really offend me, but eventually it just got too frustrating and I wanted to do the real thing,
And that's where Eric and Norman came in?
I went to Germany with 2 other guys as a 3-piece, and we did a gig as the Fender Men.
That's in the Star Club in Hamburg?
No, this was called the Big Apple Club, and that was the first sort of group situation, but then that was literally for that one spell, and then I returned to Cork, at which point Eric and Norman were splitting up their group, which was called the Axles, and we got together, and and that was Taste, really. That was 65.
Yeah, 65, 66. So like a few years later then, like all these very strange, supposedly underground bands kind of came in. Cream in particular, were the 3-piece band of all 3-piece bands. Now Taste were to be the other 3-piece band, or to be the main 3-piece band. So like, I mean, could I say that your influences were more almost jazz-like as opposed to rock-like with Cream?
Yeah.
Is jazz fair enough to say?
I don't know, really. The thing is that Cream became the big hit, and Jimi Hendrix and so on. But Taste started off more on the lines of Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. That type of, that was a 4-piece, but 3 instruments, or the Big 3 from Liverpool. There's so many influences. We didn't sort of stretch out the numbers to 20 minutes like the Cream did.
Yeah.
They're set with, I think they did about 4 or 5 numbers. We did. The influences crept in all over the place. A little bit of jazz, a little bit of folk, a little bit of blues. It wasn't as heavy as Cream, and it wasn't as. It was a little more arranged than Hendrix music. So,
well, is it fair to say that you specialise, like, in interpretations of, say, blues standards like Sugar Mama and things like that?
And
and in such a way that might have been the difference between Taste and Cream.
Not really. I think the Cream, that they're almost their complete set initially was blues, all blues standards, brought up to date, rolling, tumbling, things like that. We did a couple of old classics, updated, but all the rhythm and blues groups were doing that. So let's say that the songs that I wrote were kind of were different, So I think we kind of had a balance between the updated blues or rhythm and blues stuff and whatever I was writing, which was a kind of a mixture of all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I could never really. The fact there was 3 members, that's about the, and there's a blues bass. That's the connection with Cream and all those people. But really, we didn't even. I was more interested in Chuck Berry and Eddie Cochran and people like that.
Well, then, what was happening then around the time of the McCracken and Wilson Taste? Like that was, say, very late 60s. They left, say, in 71.
Yeah, well, the second Mark II of Taste, if you call it that, was 1968, the autumn of 68. John and Richard came in. They both played together in a show band called Derek and the Sounds, and John had been with them for a while as well. And it was around that time we moved to London as well, and eventually got a contract and got a few breaks at the Marquee Club and a few other places. But it was a long a long stretch. And of course with Eric and Norman I did another stint back in Germany, and a couple of weeks passing through England, getting the odd gig and playing all over Ireland.
Well, like you had been commuting from Ireland to Hamburg, say, and then London became the place to go to, like, and the place that you finally made your name, let's say. So like, what was it like going to London at the very beginning? Did you ever feel it wasn't worth it at all? Did you ever feel frustrated about the whole thing, that it was never going to happen?
Well, it was really bleak then. I mean, you have to remember the fact that Van Morrison and them, okay, they were an Irish group and had a hit record and so on, but they split up very early on, and the channels to get gigs in England were very, very hard, and so we had a lot of waiting around, and that's why we went to Germany, really, because you had the clubs there who would take groups, and but then you had to work sort of ridiculously long hours, but then for that you got to play what you wanted. You know, we just played rhythm and blues and rock and roll and anything we could play all night, and it was a better grounding really than doing 45 minutes in an English club. Yeah. But obviously at that time London was the mecca of music, so had to do it that way, you know.
Well, around that time you played with one of my favourite bands. You played on a tour with Blind Faith.
Yeah.
And you also, like, could I say that the most important part of your career around that time was the Isle of Wight Festival, which went down a bomb?
Yeah.
Like, was that as good as people say it was? I wasn't there.
The atmosphere, the sound, the whole, everything. Well, it really was. Like, it was special, yeah.
Like, and what happened afterwards as regards, right, okay, Rory Gallagher is now hot property. Did it happen after the Isle of Wight? The band was very popular really on the continent and in Britain and so on. I think it's only that the press only woke up to the fact that we weren't just some sort of fluke group playing around the clubs, and we just went on the Isle of Wight, and the audience just took off, and of course it frustrated them then when they found out that we were splitting up, you know, just as the press was sort of really discovering us, so to speak. But then the Blind Faith tour, that was 1970, I think. We did that one and only tour they did. We did about 6 weeks in the States, so that was a great break for us. But was that the first time you played in the States?
It was, yeah. But that was a scream, because Clapton and Winwood and all those, they decided to do the tour a la Glenn Miller, you know, get back in the Greyhound bus and so on, because the cream and traffic on the earlier tours had gone in jets and all that. But so we had to go along with that idea with Delaney and Bonnie and friends, Blind Faith and ourselves in the one bus, and covering long journeys and so on. And I mean, for us, we had the very first gig we did was Philadelphia in the Spectrum there, and we stepped onto the stage and the stage started revolving, and the promoter didn't tell us. And there we are playing in front of 20,000 people. It was more people than we'd ever seen.
The stage is moving.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this has got to be sort of I don't know, a bad trip or whatever they called it. So, but it was a good experience. But we had more fun on tours after that, because we were more in control of our own scene.
Pretty good for a Sunday morning. What's Going On is what it's called. That's from Taste on guitar and vocals, of course, Rory Gallagher. And we're looking back through the archives of some of the stuff that we did. This is from 1980. And this is talking to Rory Gallagher, who would have been 79 days ago at the very beginning of March. I got on to talking to Rory about the idea of having other band members and having to accommodate their styles. You know, was he not tempted to just have his own style in the studio and it just be, you know, I don't know, Rory Gallagher all the way?
If I want to make records on my own, I could go in with a rhythm machine and play bass as well. I want to play with musicians who enjoy playing the songs and, you know, and add their personalities to the music. So it's, you know, I wouldn't like to be Stevie Wonder, let's put it that way.
Okay, that's good enough. Well, listen, look, before I do play this song, and before you do take a sip out of that cup of tea there, there's one thing I would like to say, and that is that around this time, around 73 or thereabouts, when poll winners concerts and poll winners type things in magazines meant so much, Rory Gallagher was voted #1 guitarist in Melody Maker as the best guitarist of the year, with all the rest of those luminaries behind you, right? So, like, what did that mean to you in terms of, like, what you could have capitalised on, say being aloof from the press and being, like, not talking to anybody and suddenly releasing an album with the big press conference and anything? Why didn't you do anything like that? Or, as you put it one way, I don't want to swing out of the chandeliers on top of the pops.
God, you're remembering quotes that I can't remember. Why didn't I capitalise on the polls? Is it
why didn't you make yourself into the A League as opposed to just being Rory Gallagher and the hard working man and all the rest of it, and the hardest gigging musician in the business and the people's guitarist and all that rubbish?
But it's the press guys just put those tags on me. I regard myself as an A musician and in the A League, but I don't feel that I should, that I'm in the B League or the Z League, and I don't believe in leagues. To be in the A League doesn't mean you have to wear a velvet suit and a yellow hat and play a white guitar tonight and don't play for the next 4 years. And I hate all this pop star routine and all this malarkey, particularly at that time. I just wanted to, if I was top guitar player, fine, whatever that meant. If I was, you know your own quality, you know whether you're playing well that week or that album or this or that, you know what I mean? And I was delighted to say I was, voted high in the polls. But then, you look at the polls and you see one of your own favourites not even in there. So you can't get carried away with them. But I don't know. You're a pop artist if you capitalise on every little thing that happens. But I think if you over-capitalise on things or you become too political, it's no fun anymore. You'd be better off joining the Conservative Party. I'd rather just play, if you get a couple of slaps in the back or a poll here or there or a reaction, it's fine. But let's put it this way: my mind, the playing of music is a busy enough thing. It leaves very little time left to be kind of playing a chess game with the public or playing a chess game with the press. I don't think, I think there's too much of that in my own view. I'd like to be a little more naive and just let it happen and see what happens. That's all.
This is Dave Fanning in the Rock Programme on RT Radio 2 until 10 minutes to 2 o'clock. It's now 8, almost 9 minutes past 1 o'clock, and I'm talking to Rory Gallagher at the moment. The next track I'm going to play is not from Rory Gallagher at all, so any fans or any people who don't like Rory Gallagher can turn up the radios.
Oh dear.
Well, listen to me, Rory, then, about your influences then. A stupid question, just like, who are they, what are they, and what's it all about? Like, when I mentioned blues interpretations earlier from what you were doing in 65, who are your influences?
Oh, the list is as long as my arm, really. It started off with Buddy Holly, Eddie Cochran, Chuck Berry, Elvis, people like that, then Fats Domino. I see myself as a fan of so many people. In the blues field, it's people like Buddy Guy, Junior Wells, Muddy Waters, Blind Boy Fuller, Big Bill Brunsey, quite a. Well, and then I listen to so much stuff. I could listen to, any given week, I could, spend a night listening to blues stuff, and the following night I might listen to Waylon Jennings, people like that, Johnny Paycheck, and the next night I might be listening to Bert Jansch, Martin Carthy, and the next night, it might be Costello and The Jam, Herman Brood. It really varies like mad.
Well, one person you haven't mentioned there is Lonnie Donegan.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Lonnie. Yeah. Well, he kind of goes without. He was my initial. He was the real sort of source point influence for me, because he was really. I don't know. He just had great fire, and he did all the sort of American Woody Guthrie type songs, which really sort of, as a youngster, I thought they were fantastic. And even now, Lonnie still has a lot of fire left in him. Yeah. It's just that he's, his career has gone more towards cabaret and so on. But way back then, those records were steaming, were great.
Because, you've also played around, what's it like doing different stuff outside of the Rory Gallagher band? You played with Muddy Waters on the London Sessions and things like that as well.
Yeah. Well, it's a great holiday for me to play on. I did a couple of tracks on the Muddy album, and I did one or two with Jerry Lee and Lonnie, and it's great because there's sort of a responsibilities off your shoulders, and you can just become a guitar player, straightforward, and you play more or less what's suitable for the particular artist. It's and you learn an awful lot from these people, particularly Muddy, because just being in that fella's presence, you learn, the way he tunes his guitar, the way he talks, the way he sings, and
because as well, last night now in the stadium I saw B.B. King in concert. Did you listen to a lot of his music in the past as well?
No, I prefer I've listened to B.B. and Freddie and Otis Rush, the kind of the so-called modern blues players, but I like the kind of slightly rougher players like Elmore James and J.B. Hutto and
well, what about the guy we're playing next then?
Slim Harpo, I like him a lot. He's just sort of you can hear a lot of Mick Jagger copies his voice a lot, I think, or used to do, but just the this is kind of modern blues, but he had his own sound. A lot of tremolo was used on the guitar, and it's a great number called Tip On In.
Tip On In, it is. You mentioned the engineer earlier on. Now, we were talking about Juice earlier on, the second album. You said it took a long week, as you put it yourself, with a creative Guinness and just getting into the studio for that long week. Now, take someone like Alan O'Duffy,
yes,
who has been producing it recently, and he said that you are a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So how do you call yourself a perfectionist and also only just take 1 week to record an album?
Well, when we did that album Juice, that was with an engineer called Robin Sylvester, who later went on to do various other albums. It was done in an 8-track studio, a reggae studio at the time, believe it or not, called Tangerine Studios. And well, things were done fairly fast, because at that time I wanted to sing live and play live lead guitar and make it as organic, or whatever the word is, as possible. Whereas in recent times I'm quite prepared to sort of sing, overdub the vocal or overdub lead guitar and so on. But then we're working 24-track now, which takes longer to mix and this kind of thing. But the more albums that you make, the more keen you are to improve, and you learn, and you make a few albums that you're not that happy with, and then you try to make up for it with another one. It's nothing wrong with being a perfectionist, but you certainly can go over the top. And so really what I'm going to do next time is go back to 16-track or 8-track even, and just try and work a little more to the point. But I think if you give yourself certain limitations, like more rigid studio sort of things and less time, you might get a little more of a spontaneous sort of thing.
Well, speaking of spontaneity then, like live on stage, next Saturday you're going to walk up on the stage in Tralee.
Yeah.
Now, 13 years ago, say, or about that time, I saw you in the Stella House in Mount Marion, right?
Yeah.
Now, is the enthusiasm still there? Is it still the same?
Oh yeah, it's well, it's
in other words,
it doesn't seem like 13 years
what
to me.
makes Rory Gallagher tick? I mean, how is
Timex? I know. Since I was a child, I just love listening to music and I love playing it. That's just as simple as that. I don't, you watch Seamus Ennis or something, who's late 50s or even older than that.
Or late 90s.
Well, I'm being kind to him. But or talk about Muddy Waters. I mean, the energy's still there. It just becomes more mature and so on. And contrary to what people think, the more you do, the more accomplished you become, the more experienced you become, the more you learn that you still have a lot to learn, and you have to hone the music down and get to the point. And it's simplicity. It's the same old cliche, I know, but
well, in other words, then, if you tour somewhere, say like the States, and having to travel so far on the Greyhounds or on the airplanes or whatever, and the hotels and all the rest of it, does it is it all worthwhile when you stand up on stage? Is that when it really makes that makes sense? Let's go on to the next date after that.
Oh yeah, well, definitely. I mean, the point is, if I wasn't doing it on stage, I'd be playing at home. I'd be playing at a club. It's I think that I don't. I'm one of those guys who's not too. You find musicians cribbing about airplanes and travel and all that. It doesn't bug me so much. I enjoy it, and I like seeing. It's easier than joining the Navy to see the world. And you see these different places, and you get a chance to see different players, and I enjoy traveling, and it never kind of wears me out to the point where I don't enjoy the show.